What's he do? He removes 5,000 troops from West Germany. From Germany? What does he do? He puts new tariffs on EU in defiance of the fact that they have a new trade deal that he himself negotiated and inked just a few short months ago.
Fresh tariffs on Europe and troops pulled from Germany, even after a deal Washington itself signed. Mark Carney is positioning Canada differently in response. With U.S. trade pressure mounting, this trip to Armenia highlights Ottawa's push for stronger European ties. The contrast in approach is sharpening fast, and the stakes for Canada's economic security are rising with every new announcement from the South. These moves are forcing Canada to diversify rapidly. If you're following how Carney is responding to U.S. pressure, drop your thoughts below on whether Europe is the right priority. Subscribe to Canada Rush for clear-eyed breakdowns.
Well, it's not a spectacular trip, but it's steady progress, knitting together relationships with Europeans, with European capitals, with the European community itself. So, it's 30 hours well spent, to be honest with you. And obviously, as a sidebar, reaffirmation of our support to Zelensky and to Ukraine. But take a look at what Carney said in his speech to the European community when he addressed them, picking up on Graham's point about Davos and its long shadow. He said, listen, we, Canada and Europe, we don't want to be part of a world that is transactional, that's insular, right? He was talking about the United States. He's talking about a world where Donald Trump doesn't like the fact that the Europeans have not come to his rescue in the Strait of Hormuz. And so what's he do? He removes 5,000 troops from West Germany. From Germany? What does he do? He puts new tariffs on EU in defiance of the fact that they have a new trade deal that he himself negotiated and inked just a few short months ago. That's what Carney's getting at. That's what's resonating with those European leaders, because they're saying, yes, this guy captures in words and in spirit what we need to do. We're going to have to bulk up and work together if we're going to have any hope of withstanding the onslaught from a capricious United States.
Scott Reed describes it accurately. Steady, deliberate progress rather than flashy gestures. Carney's message in Armenia resonated because it directly addressed the unpredictability coming from Washington, troop reductions in Germany, and new tariffs on the EU, despite a recent trade agreement. This isn't abstract diplomacy. Canada's two-way trade with the EU reached roughly $180 billion in 2025, and officials are actively targeting growth in investment and critical sectors. Carney's background gives him natural access across European capitals. The readouts consistently emphasize trade, investment, and infrastructure, practical areas where new flows can reduce over-reliance on any single partner. European leaders, facing their own pressures, see value in a partner that prioritizes stable, rules-based engagement. This outreach is about building options. While the U.S. remains essential, repeated policy shifts have made diversification urgent. The real test lies ahead, turning these meetings into concrete agreements that deliver new markets and capital. That progress will shape how effectively Canada manages the current tensions.
Yeah, it's resonating with European leaders to the extent that the Prime Minister has been addressed to, or has been asked to address the European Parliament. I hear you. I'm wondering why the Prime Minister, it seems, is so drawn to Europe. He's obviously very comfortable meeting with European allies. Why is that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, he spent all those years in Britain, so he's used to going to these meetings on the continent. He knows these people individually. He probably believes that's a network of contacts and leadership that he can tap and hopefully translate to Canada's benefit. But, the other issue is I think, take a look at all the readouts, the statements from the Prime Minister's office about his, conversations with the European leaders, with Spain, with the EU. They all start the same way. We talked about trade. We talked about investment. We talked about infrastructure investment.
Security,
and
yeah.
He is shopping. He's trying to get dollars to Canada. He's trying to get trade relations. So we have some dilution of our reliance on the United States, who is no longer reliable.
The core objective is now explicit, actively shopping for new trade and investment to dilute reliance on an unpredictable U.S. partner. Carney's long experience in Europe is being leveraged to open doors that could bring real capital inflows. This pivot moves Canada from reaction to preparation. While U.S. tariffs create immediate headwinds, European engagement offers a counterbalance in sectors like critical minerals, clean technology, and defense cooperation. The government is playing a longer game, building relationships that markets reward over time. How quickly these efforts produce measurable results will determine the political and economic impact. The domestic debate is already heating up around exactly that question.
And the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, continues to criticize the prime minister's objectives, saying he's traveling and not delivering results here at home. What do you make of that, Scott?
I think I kind of couldn't think of anything better to say type of opposition. I mean, if you look at what Poilievre has been saying over the course of the past week, he seems to have caught on to the fact that we have moved into a majority world. If you think about it, the government is acting less like something has changed than the opposition because they're playing the long game. They're saying, let's see if we can set a trap for Carney. Can he demonstrate results? Can he actually get not meetings with European leaders, but genuine dollars and cents in terms of trade? So they're trying to set that trap. That's what this is about. You know, the kind of the hyper partisan silly stuff about, well, why is he always on an airplane?
Poilievre's criticism focuses on travel versus immediate domestic results, a standard opposition line. Reid views it as groundwork for future attacks if tangible outcomes don't materialize. This reveals two different timelines, one demanding quick wins, the other focused on structural resilience amid U.S. pressure. Canadians appear to understand the seriousness of the moment. Short-term optics about airplanes may have limited traction when the alternative is deeper exposure to volatile trade policy. European responses to Carney's non-transactional message have been positive, suggesting these trips are more than photo ops. The real contest will be judged on whether new trade dollars and investment commitments follow. That data will arrive over the coming quarters, not days.
I don't think Canadians recognize we're in a crisis. I don't think that's going to have much traction. What they're really trying to do, what Mr. Poilievre is really trying to do, is lay groundwork for 6 months, a year, 2 years from now and say, all these promises, all these meetings, all these rhetorics, it didn't come out in results. That's, I guess, maybe his best political play right now, but it doesn't feel like it's going to strike a massive chord immediately with Canadians.
Public attention seems focused more on the substance of the pressure than on partisan travel critiques. As Carney continues these outreach efforts, the pressure from unpredictable U.S. policy isn't easing. The coming months will test which strategy better secures Canada's position: steady diversification or demands for faster domestic focus. The results could reshape the debate. Canada Rush is tracking exactly how these European moves fit into Canada's broader response to U.S. trade pressure. Which sector, energy, autos, critical minerals, do you believe offers the biggest opportunity with Europe right now? Leave your strategic take in the comments. The larger pattern is coming into focus. Faced with a transactional and at times disruptive U.S. approach, fresh tariffs on European allies, troop adjustments, and repeated threats to integrated supply chains, Canada is quietly building a wider set of options through consistent European engagement. Carney's trip to Armenia, his address to European leaders, and the repeated emphasis on trade and investment readouts reflect a disciplined strategy of knitting together relationships that can deliver alternative markets and capital. By leveraging personal networks and a shared preference for stable rules over unpredictability, the government is pursuing practical outcomes in investment, infrastructure, and strategic sectors. Trade volumes with Europe already provide a substantial base, and new partnerships are being layered on top to reduce vulnerability without severing the vital U.S. connection. This is passive strength in action, measured steps that accumulate resilience rather than seeking confrontation. The contrast is visible in the operating styles. One side escalates with sudden policy shifts and demands. The other consolidates ties and seeks steady progress. European reactions suggest the latter resonates in the current climate. Analysts and industry observers tracking investment flows increasingly note the advantages of predictable partnerships when reliability is in shorter supply. Global responses and market signals reinforce this reading. Diversification efforts are viewed as prudent risk management rather than rejection. The accumulated evidence points to a structural shift where trusted relationships gain ground. Will these patient moves generate sufficient new trade and investment dollars in time to meaningfully bolster Canada's position, or will the long game prove too slow against the pace of pressure?